Hey everyone. So this is day 12 of Glory Be. We're going to read chapters 21 and 22. Yesterday when we read, we had finished off where Glory and Jocelyn found out that the pool was not actually closing, that it was a prank. And that Frankie was the one who did the prank. He put up the fake sign to trick Glory and to trick Jocelyn and everybody else into thinking that the pool was going to open. And so at the very end of this chapter, Glory swears that she will never, ever talk to Frankie again. So chapter 21 starts. It's called Bald-Faced Lie. Remember, when I stop to write any important events down, I want you to write them with me. That way, when you do the Google form at the end, you have all of the answers you need. So let's get started. 2 days later, when Frankie showed up at our kitchen door, busting his britches to tell me something, I ignored him. Emma and I were reading Nancy Drew together, searching for clues in the old clock. Emma looked up once, shook her head, and then turned to the next chapter. It was the 1st of July, and even though I was happy that my birthday month was here, I still was red-hot mad at Frankie. I wasn't speaking to him, no matter how hard he knocked at my door. "Open up, Glory. I've got something to tell you." "I know what you did," I yelled back. "Get out of here, Frankie." I took to reading my chapter to Emma even louder. "I didn't do anything." Frankie pushed open the door, and he scooted his chair next to me at the kitchen table, but he wouldn't look straight at me. I slammed the book shut and moved as far away from him as I could. "It was you who put up that fake sign about the pool opening. I'm not talking to you." Emma stood and laid our book carefully on the shelf next to her cookbooks. She didn't turn to face us. Even with her back turned, I could tell that she was listening by the way her shoulders hunched up. "I didn't do anything, but your friend, that Yankee, did something bad. She's in trouble." Frankie looked around the kitchen. "She's not here, is she? That Laura girl? She and some of them other freedom people committed a crime." "A crime? What are you talking about?" I asked. "Laura broke into the pool and she stole something." "That's a bald-faced lie, Frankfurter Smith." Frankie leaned up close. His voice got quieter. "Somebody went over there last night and messed with the pool lockers, and they took candy from the snack bar. Laura and her friends did it." "You're loony, Frankie. Laura wouldn't do that." "Well, she did. They found one of her dumb black socks dropped on this dressing room floor." He pushed his glasses up on his nose and he slicked back his hair, looked me straight in the eye like he was telling the gospel truth. "You know how you're always trying to get her to take those ugly socks off and go barefooted? This time your stupid friend did take off her socks." Emma spoke up quietly without turning around. "Frankie, mind your manners. Glory's friend Laura wouldn't hurt a flea." "Yeah, Frankie. Laura wouldn't break into any old lockers. You're making that up," I said. "You're telling a lie. Your Yankee friend's in big trouble. There's a police car over there now. Come see for yourself if you don't believe me." Frankie took a step towards the back door, just as Emma turned around fast. Emma put her hand on my shoulder. "Brother Joe will skin you alive getting mixed up in all that mess. You're staying put, Glory." We won't be gone long, Miss Emma," Frankie said. "We'll just ride our bikes slow, so Glory can see. My daddy's there. We'll be okay." Emma shook her head. "No, Glory's not going. That's that." She turned her back again to take out peaches, flour, and sugar for a pie. She started peeling the peaches. I needed to prove Frankie was lying. I was even willing to risk getting skinned alive by Brother Joe and peeled like a peach by Emma. I hightailed it out of there before Emma turned around to stop me. We parked our bikes in front of the pool. Frankie had a goofy smile on his face. Across the street was a policeman talking to his daddy. Mr. Smith had both hands on his hips and his legs wide apart. He looked like he was ready to slap somebody good. He walked right into the pool gate and slammed it hard behind him, rattling the new pool close sign. Frankie said, "See, Dad is talking to a policeman. Didn't I tell you?" "Tell me what? I don't believe a word you say. Laura wouldn't break into this pool. You don't know anything." But when I saw the policeman holding up Laura's black sock, I got an awful feeling about the whole mess. So, a couple important events have happened so far. You know that Frankie comes to Glory's house and says Laura broke into the pool and stole from the lockers. And then Frankie and Glory see a policeman talking to Frankie's daddy and holding one of Laura's black socks. One of Laura's black socks. So these are both really important details because Frankie comes over and he says, I'm not lying, I didn't do anything, I didn't do a prank, just come here. And he's saying how Glory's friend Laura got caught sneaking into the pool and stealing from the lockers. And Glory doesn't believe him because he lied before about the sign, he lied about the pool opening and everything like that. So she tells him, you're lying, this isn't true. And so Frankie says, well, I'll prove it to you. Let's go down to the pool right now and you'll see. And so they go down to the pool. They see a policeman talking to Frankie's daddy. And they see him holding one of Laura's black socks. And that's kind of the proof that Frankie thinks is going to make it so that Laura gets in trouble. But Glory says she still didn't believe it, but she had this really bad feeling in her stomach. So we're going to keep reading to see what happens next. Chapter 22, A Heap of Trouble. When I got home, I could smell Emma's pie baking. I tried to sneak back to the kitchen, but there was no getting around her. Don't you ever disobey me like that again. Emma was holding a pie server. I'm sorry, I just wanted to. She pointed the server at me. Sorry's not enough. You're my responsibility when your father's away. I have a good mind to put this server on your backside. Emma never spanked me, but oh, did she look mad now. I felt my feet ease away from her. She said, Yes, that's right. Take a step back, Glory. Step back in your thinking, too. Pause before you act, child. The sun rises slowly over Hanging Moss, and so should you. I nodded to show her that I understood. Go. Wash your hands for supper, she said softly. At the supper table, all of us ate quietly. I was working out how to prove Frankie was wrong about Laura. Daddy was probably thinking about preaching to the shut-ins he'd been visiting tomorrow. And Jesslyn was sure swooning over Robbie. After we each ate a big wedge of peach pie, we headed for the front porch. Jesslyn and I pushed back and forth on the porch swing with our bare feet. Emma waited inside for her Liberty taxi ride home. When her friend pulled up, I called out, Hey, Mr. Miles, Emma will be there in a minute. I stood up just when Emma stepped on the porch, and I noticed something I'd never seen before. 2 little colored kids sat in the back seat of that taxi, a boy and a girl, younger than me. When the girl's eyes met mine, she looked like she wanted to wave at me, but she stopped her hand before she let the wave rise up to where the open window let in the night summer heat. Our daddy sat off to one side of the porch, holding his newspaper under the light. I leaned over to read the open page. Is my letter to the editor in there today? All I saw was an ad for chick eggs, priced at 40 cents a dozen, and an announcement that someone was giving away kittens for free. Daddy shook his head. Mrs. Simpson has a lot to say about what gets in this paper and what doesn't. He turned the page. You did a good thing, Glory. Anything about the community pool? Frankie says the freedom workers broke in and messed up the lockers and stole things. I saw a policeman there this afternoon, Jesslyn said. What'd you hear, Glory? I I glanced up just as Emma started down the steps. Before I could answer my sister, Emma stopped real quick and took a step back onto the porch. A white car pulled up in front of our house. Out came Mr. Smith. Frankie was in the back seat. He didn't get out. He didn't even wave. Howdy, Reverend. Mr. Smith touched his hat, tipped it down towards our daddy. He nodded at me and Jesslyn and looked right through Emma like she wasn't even there. May I have a word? He asked Daddy. As preacher kids, Jesslyn and I know that when a member of the church shows up on our front porch, especially when a member is a deacon like Mr. Smith, we're supposed to give Daddy some privacy. Emma, standing with her summer straw hat set just so, and her pocketbook under her arm, ready to go home in Mr. Miles' taxi, knew what she was supposed to do too. All three of us stepped inside the front screen door. Daddy spoke first. What's on your mind, James? Even though we'd left the porch, we could hear every word between the two men and could see them talking. It's about Glory, Mr. Smith answered. What about my daughter? I sucked in my breath and held it. You realize she's been keeping bad company, socializing with that Yankee gal over at the library, Mr. Smith said. I heard tell Glory wrote a letter to the editor of the paper about the pool closing. Your daughter is probably unduly influenced by the girl from up north. Frankie thinks Glory knows where she's staying at. Daddy didn't answer right off. Emma leans closer to the door. Even without the front hall light turned on, I saw her jaw clenching and a frown taking over her face. We're trying to get word to that girl's mama about the vandalism that occurred at the pool. Mr. Smith took a step closer. He was about a foot taller than my daddy, so Daddy had to look up at him. Somebody broke into the pool last evening late, messed up the lockers and stole candy bars. Mr. Smith's voice got louder. Near about made me want to cover up my ears. We suspect it was that girl from the library. Daddy was stretching his neck, holding his head up higher to look as tall as Mr. Smith. I'm speaking for the pool committee, Frankie's daddy went on. But there's also people in the church who agree that Glory being friends with these outside agitators. Why, she's sticking her nose in where it don't belong. By now, Daddy looked up to be as tall as Frankie's daddy. Maybe it was the sure way he was speaking. Well now, James, truth to tell, I'm right proud of Glory. She's standing up for what she believes is right. All of us should lead our children to do that, don't you know? What I know is that we can't have these freedom people damaging town property. We need to stand up for things the way they've always been. Mr. Smith's bald head glowed under the front porch light. His eyes looked meaner than a snake's. Jesslyn grabbed my hand in the dark front hall. She held it so hard I thought my fingers might break off. I shivered. Emma reached over and squeezed my shoulder, and then hugged me close. For a minute, all I could hear was her whispering, Lord, Lord, over and over, like she was praying to herself. I leaned into her and listened to my daddy and Mr. Smith start up again. I was getting madder at every word Frankie's daddy said, but I was proud of my daddy for sticking up for me, and Laura. I don't believe Laura did what you're accusing her of, Daddy said. She's visited in our home, and she is a sweet, well-behaved, polite child. She is a friend of Glory's. That's enough for me. That's so. Well, she was up to no good last night, I tell you, Mr. Smith answered. They found a black sock at the scene. My boys tell me she's the only person who wears those socks. She's lucky the police won't press charges. Well, this time anyway. But her mama, that civil rights worker. Mr. Smith pronounced civil rights like it was a bad taste he needed to spit out of his mouth. She needs to know what her daughter's up to. I couldn't wait one more minute in the dark listening to Mr. Smith. I knew I shouldn't talk back to a grown-up standing on our front porch. That was my friend he was talking about, and this was my pool, and 3 days before my birthday. I pulled away from Jesslyn and Emma, and then stormed onto the porch, looking hard at Frankie's daddy. Everything including the lightning bugs, seemed to hold still for a minute, waiting for me. I let out a hard breath. You're wrong, Mr. Smith. Laura Lampert's my friend. She wouldn't do that. You're just plain wrong. Jesslyn opened the door and stood close to me on the porch. Emma pushed by Mr. Smith and stopped at the bottom of the steps. She kept her eyes on her friend driving the taxicab. There's more to two sides than it seems at first looking, she said. Two sides to most stories. Folks better be thinking about that for once. And Emma kept on walking without another word, except to call out into the evening darkness. Good night, Brother Joe, Jesslyn, and Glory. See y'all in the morning. Mr. Smith shook his head and squeezed his eyes shut real tight. You'd best be leaving, James, Daddy said. When the light came on in the car, Frankie was sinking down so low in that back seat, I could hardly see him. Daddy held me and Jesslyn tight. You did right, Glory, he whispered. I didn't like the look Mr. Smith had when he stomped off our porch. There was a heap of hate swirling around Frankie's daddy. And that is where we're ending today. So, oh man, a lot happened. So Frankie and Glory see the policeman talking to Frankie's daddy at the pool. And then Frankie's daddy came to Glory's house to talk to Brother Joe about where Laura lives. Because remember, he was trying to tell her, to say, oh, well, this Laura that your daughter's been hanging out with, she's in a lot of trouble, and we need to find out where she is so we can talk to her mama. And you guys know where she lives. So, but Glory's daddy sticks up for Laura, and he sticks up for Glory, saying that Laura didn't do anything wrong, that he knows her and he trusts her, and that this is all a big misunderstanding. And then that's our next big important event, is that Brother Joe sticks up for Laura to Mr. Smith, Frankie's daddy. So Brother Joe sticks up for Laura to Mr. Smith. And then Glory comes out, and Glory sticks up for Laura. So Glory stands up to Mr. Smith and tells him that he is wrong. And that's so important because, like Lori said earlier in the book and earlier in this chapter, that preachers' kids know what to do. If someone comes over and wants to, whoops, I don't know why it did that. No, I wasn't supposed to do that either. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Try and fix my camera here.